What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 7 of The Punk. Now incorporating TNA. We're just want to diversify things a little bit more, and just focusing on WWE would be a little bit biased. So The Punk is supposed to be something that looks at all aspects of wrestling and mixed martial arts. So obviously, just trying to add something new there as well. I'll get onto that in a bit. The previous week in WWE was an interesting one for really one reason, and it was WWE kind of shocking a lot of hardcore fans by actually doing something that nobody thought was going to happen, and that was repackaging someone in Joe Henning, who was known as Michael McGillicuddy. Don't ask, awful name, and repackaging him as Paul Heyman's new guy, which I didn't see coming. I don't think a lot of fans saw coming, actually. They were expecting some returning veteran wrestler or something like that. A lot of people were hoping that it was going to be Rob Van Dam, which I just thought was a little hopeful, really. It would have been nice, but he is 42 years old now. It's a little bit probably too late in your career to be taking advice from the Walrus. So they've repackaged Henning as a wrestler called Curtis Axel. Curtis being the first name of his father, Mr. Perfect, and Axel being the ring name of, I think it was his grandfather. So it's quite a nice little touch there. Joe Henning had always said that he wanted some sort of link back to his father and his grandfather, and he's got it, which is great. It's nice to see WWE running with something like that. Unfortunately, Triple H came down to the ring in a continuation of his rivalry with Paul Heyman and told him to be quiet when the grown-ups were talking, and then slapped him and then wouldn't go over clean to him in his match. Typical, so WWE basically they raised themselves with the unexpected re-debut of Joe Henning, and then just pushed it down again by not having him go over clean. But saying that, he was in action on SmackDown, which I'll get to in a moment. So the rest of Raw was actually a fairly decent episode last week. It was probably the best episode they've put out since the first, the night after WrestleMania, which most of you will probably already know, and if you saw it, you'll say it's probably hands down the best episode of the last couple of years. This episode obviously not as good as that, but it was a step in the right direction for WWE. So coming off of a fairly decent pay-per-view in Extreme Rules, things are looking quite good going forward. A few of the matches that were on the event, no John Cena as well, no John Cena. So could it be some sort of kind of curse, John Cena's curse? Whenever he shows up, it's naturally a crap Raw. I don't know, maybe you guys can tell me. But he wasn't there. He did turn up afterwards, though, in a dark match portion to, obviously appease the fans who had just watched Triple H fall over a few times instead of getting pinned like he should have been doing. WWE. So they are running with Ryback and Cena as the main rivalry going into Payback, which is the WWE's new pay-per-view. Ryback came in an ambulance to zero heat or any kind of pop whatsoever. He is improving. He's improving. He was really awful on the mic a few weeks ago, and while he's still not very good, he is kind of growing. He is improving himself. I mean, he's got most of the in-ring stuff sorted. He's not going to be a technical wrestler. He's a brawler. Power wrestler, so he doesn't need to be doing any high-flying somersaults anytime soon. But he is improving, which is the most important thing. And issued the challenge for a ambulance match, obviously, between him and Cena. So Cena's reaction should be tonight, and it should be interesting to see what else they can do as well. The Shield also cut a pretty spot-on, awesome promo, which is probably my favourite promo of the year. I'd love to show you the clip, but WWE probably just removed this video anyway, so you'll just have to take my word for it. You'll find the video on this site. That's pretty much it, really. Raw was a pretty good effort, the best since the night after WrestleMania. I really hope that they keep the momentum going. It's just I know that they won't, so there's no point in even saying it really. Moving on to SmackDown, as I mentioned, Curtis Axel got his first proper decent match instead of just making, Triple H, just focusing on himself all the time. So he faced the returning Sin Cara. Just in case any of you realised that he'd been away, Sin Cara, he kind of came back and got beat. So the future doesn't look bright for that guy. Curtis Axel was impressive. He's using a lot of the moves that he was using when he was Michael McGillicuddy, including the McGillicutter, which is a spinning STO, I think. I don't know. It looks quite generic, but if he added a little bit of theatrics to it, it could look pretty cool. So he's off to a good start, and let's just hope they can build it up to have a decent mini feud leading into Payback to get him exposure on the pay-per-view front. We'll see how that goes. It seems to be a common occurrence at the moment. I don't know if it's part of the storyline that Teddy Long comes out every episode and makes a tag team match. I know it makes it raises a chuckle, usually, but it's getting a bit tired now. Because he hasn't been around for a while because he's having some surgery off screen. So hopefully when he comes back there'll be some sort of resolution to this, and we'll see where the storylines are actually going. But Teddy Long seems to be loving the power at the moment, and surprise, surprise, he made another tag team match this week, last week as well, involving Kofi Kingston, Randy Orton, and Sheamus versus The Shield. But the big talking point is the fact that Roman Reigns appeared to injure his ankle while he was during the match, and he looked visibly distressed with his condition. He finished the match. He performed the spear and then took an RKO on the outside of the ring, and there has been no word from WWE on his condition. So we have to assume that he probably rolled the ankle and he's probably okay. So we hope so, because if you guys recall back in 2010, I think really the thing that ruined Nexus was Ryback, back then known as Skip Sheffield, when he got injured and broke his ankle basically. It really hurt the group, and I think eventually results in their demise, just not having that guy around. Not just Skip Sheffield, but just losing somebody. They lost their momentum, and especially when you've only got 3 members of the Shield, losing someone like that would be, an absolute death stroke. So let's hope he's okay. So that about sums up the week for WWE. All in all, a fairly decent week. The only problem with SmackDown I had was that once again they spent too long focusing on Raw. So there was a Raw recap in there of about 15 minutes, which was all based on Triple H and his kind of match with Kurt Axel. So they really need to sort that out. I mean, it's been a strong couple of weeks for SmackDown, and they've really let themselves down again by just using the show as a complete marketing tool for their #1 show, which features more adverts and plugs for anything else than actual wrestling anyway. So I'm not going to influence anything, but if you're a fan of WWE and you haven't seen any of the programming recently, it's probably not a good time to get into it, because it is a waste of time. That's just my opinion. So moving on, TNA, I've started doing TNA live coverage and results, as I mentioned, just to diversify things. And TNA has got a lot of stick from WWE fans for being an inferior company in every way, and I think that's quite unfair, really. On a number of different levels, really. Their storytelling and their backstage promos and their general acting is piss poor. Let's not kid ourselves, guys. It is rubbish. The opening segment of this week's TNA Impact featured Brooke Hogan coming out to the ring, talking with her dad and Sting for a while, and it was awful. And Hulk Hogan opens up every show just like John Cena does, and he is awful. And the show is really just saved by a number of the younger talents and the X Division. But therein is where TNA is a strong company, and it's not. TNA is never going to be direct competition for WWE. They're just on totally different levels. I mean, you've got TNA here and you've got WWE in the stratosphere. They won't compete. It will take something massive, for TNA to be able to compete. I mean, WCW, the only reason why they were able to compete was Ted Turner and his billions of dollars. TNA don't have that. So But in terms of a company that deals with wrestling as opposed to WWE's entertainment, TNA really does do itself a service on that level. And also, since they took TNA out on the road as well, I've noticed that the product has actually improved. That the pops are still not there, and the audience interaction is still a little bit lower than probably what they were anticipating. But they are making the right moves basically, and it is improving. So this week on Impact we saw the return of Suicide. He's a character that came from their wrestling game from a couple of years ago. He failed to connect with the audience his first time round, came back and looked pretty sharp. I can't remember the name of the guy who's performing as Suicide, but I know he's a former Ring of Honor prospect. So good that they're trying again with something that didn't work last time. Maybe they can make it work this time. But it was quite a solid match. But that's to be expected from the next division match. So he moves into the Slammiversary match with Kenny King and Chris Sabin. So it should be quite a cool Ultimate X match. Also on the show you had, well, the main talking point of the show was AJ Styles' return, and Ivy joined Aces and Eights, and in a swerve that no one saw coming. That's sarcasm, by the way. He did actually turn on Aces and Eights, hitting DOC with a hammer, and just jumping out there and denouncing them. So it was coming. But what I did find quite strange was the fact that he helped the group attack Kurt Angle. So maybe switching over to a tweener. A tweener isn't something that we see very often these days. It tends to usually be black or white. So quite interesting where they're moving with that. So I will be doing TNA going forward, and I know in the United States it actually airs on a Thursday, but I'll be doing it on Sunday nights because Challenge TV is so awesome. I have to watch Bullseye every week. No, I'm being serious on that one. Moving on to UFC, we had UFC 160 on Saturday night with Cain Velasquez defending against Antonio Bigfoot Silva in a rematch of their fight from last year. As many predicted, it did end quickly and in Velasquez's favour, but not a lot of people really, if they're being honest with themselves, thought it was going to be that quick. Cain Velasquez finished him in about 1 minute and 20 seconds with some counter punches which just knocked him out. Didn't knock him out, but knocked him down to the floor, which allowed Velasquez just to pick up the TKO win. But the match that everyone's talking about at the moment is Junior Dos Santos and Mark Hunt. Mark Hunt was entering the fight as basically a Cinderella man, a man who, when he came into the UFC, had lost 5 straight in Pride. They offered him money to not fight in the organisation. He said, no, fuck you, I'm going to fight, and he fought and he won. He lost his first fight in the UFC, but since then he's been on an absolute rampage, and he's done very well for himself, and he seems like a nice guy, a nice down-to-earth dude, very entertaining, very funny as well, and unfortunately things didn't go his way. A lot of people thought that if he could have caught Junior Dos Santos with a couple of his trademark shots, he could have had a chance, but it was just a puncher's chance really. Dos Santos has a very understated ground game, and basically finished the fight with something I never thought he would do, and it was basically another spinning heel kick. We saw Vitor Belfort finish Luke Rockhold last week with the same move, and Junior Dos Santos pulled it out the bag, and it was crazy. Didn't fully connect. I think the shot that actually finished the fight was the punch on the ground, which looked horrible, by the way. But Junior Dos Santos, his ability to just show something like that is massive as well, in terms of showing Velasquez that he isn't just a one-dimensional boxer like we all think he is. So obviously we're now being left with the rubber match, basically Velasquez versus Dos Santos 3. That'll probably be coming to us later on in the year, so that'll be a really exciting match to look forward to. So that about sorts it out for UFC as well, and for the show in general. Thank you very much for watching, guys. As I've mentioned, follow me on Twitter, like me on Facebook, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'll be back next week on the regular day of Sunday, providing you with all your wrestling and MMA news. Thank you very much for watching.